It was time to leave Frisco, Colorado, and continue on I-70. We were caught off guard as we entered the Eisenhower Johnson Memorial Tunnel. I don't think we had even had time to finish our cup of coffee, but wow, what a trip! 3 weeks ago, we had been in the desert. On the other side of the tunnel was a ski area. Wow, amazing! We ventured off of Interstate 70 and began driving north on Highway 40. We drove through the cute little ski town of Winter Park. I was fascinated with this moose. A little further up the road, we found a great spot to stop, have lunch, and watch a roadside waterfall. That evening, I had contacted the local hospital and again asked if overnighting would be okay. They had no issue with it. It was not the most glamorous, but it gave us another quiet night. The next morning was frosty cold, but as usual for us, we rolled out of Granby at around 6:30 a.m. It was only about a 30-minute drive to the entrance of Rocky Mountain National Park, and the drive was beautiful. As we got closer to the park, we began to notice the remnants of a fire. We pulled over for a minute to see if we could find any information about the fire that had gone through here. We found out that the fire had began October 14th of 2020, and by the 21st it had grown to almost 190,000 acres and had entered Rocky Mountain National Park on the west side near Grand Lake. It would eventually cross the Continental Divide and encroach on Estes Park, Colorado. A winter storm brought necessary cold temperature and lighter winds and snow. The fire was 100% contained by the end of November. The fire had burned over 21,000 acres within the park and an estimated 580 structures.
We're going to leave it. We can find it again. We have breakfast to go make. Yes.
Our campsite was not quite ready, so we found a large parking area at the Holsworth cabin. I needed to feed this man. After breakfast, it was time to explore this historic site. This original cabin was built by an early settler, Joseph Flischutz, in 1902. For some unknown reason, he abandoned the 160-acre homestead in 1911 and was never heard from again.
Pay for this.
Good less work.
So they turned it into a guest ranch, and they were very successful. And they ended up buying this property that he abandoned, and he had a lien on it, so the guy that had the lien had the property.
How long did he live here?
He lived here 9 years.
9 years.
5 years he had to live for the homestead to get the property.
Mm-hmm.
And then he got the deed, and then he tried 4 more years, and then he just gave up. And so he just rode away on a horse is the story, and nobody knows where he went. And so the guy with the lien, he got the property, but then when the Holsworths came, they sold it. They bought it from him so that they had one big continuous piece of land.
Then it was time to set up camp. which was pretty darn easy for us. A couple chairs, the awning out, and give Mr. Skip a bed. Oh, and we finally needed the Thermacell mosquito repellent. It was also at this stay that I think I was bitten by what I thought was a mosquito on my right shoulder and upper back. But more on that later. We had fun playing with the time-lapse feature on our phones. It's amazing how fast the blue skies became dark clouds, and yes, thunderstorms and more rain. This morning, we have about a 40-mile drive through the park on Highway 34. Just a few minutes into our drive, I spotted what I thought was a moose. I was so excited because I had never seen a moose in the wild, and apparently I still have not, as I was told this was a female elk.
Okay, bye-bye, Mama Moose. She sure is inquisitive. Have a good lunch. Breakfast. Something.
There was a fair amount of road repair underway. I can only imagine how much work goes into maintaining this roadway with its brutal winters. And we started seeing snow. So we reached the Great Continental Divide, a boundary system that separates our continent's water systems into two completely different oceans, the Atlantic and the Pacific. Skip wanted nothing to do with the snow, so we took a walk to a snow-free zone for him to do his business. Afterwards, he was willing to do a short photo op. It was after this stop that for me, having lived my entire life on the Pacific side of the Continental Divide, all the rivers were running in the, quote, wrong direction. The Trail Ridge Road travels high elevations as it crosses the mountains, and the 11-mile section of highway is above the tree line. The peak elevation of the highway is 12,183 feet at Fall River Pass, and it is the highest elevation of continuous through paved highway in the country. When we stopped at this viewpoint, I noticed something odd with Waldo. I should explain that about a month ago, when we had first left on our trip, we hadn't gotten far from home before we had a warning pop up on the dash indicating we were low on coolant. We checked the reservoir, and indeed it was below the minimum line. There were no auto parts stores nearby, so we just added straight water and hoped for the best. We kept an eye on the temp gauge, and it never ran too hot. However, after having done some climbing and being at a high elevation, I heard the coolant water boiling. It did not reach above the normal range on the temperature gauge, but it was definitely running warm. We knew we had pretty much reached the summit, and we gave Waldo a bit to cool down before we started driving the rest of the way. Rock Cut is referred to the roof of the Rockies. Winter temperatures remain below freezing almost all winter, and wind speeds can exceed 150 miles per hour. Despite the severe conditions, more than 100 species of flowering plants live on the rich alpine tundra. This area is a protected ecological research plot established in 1958. The plot was entered on the National Register of Historic Places in 2007 as the first ecological plot in the country to be so recognized. And as luck would have it, we were parked enjoying the views when some rangers pulled in and began tiptoeing rock to rock with eyes on the ground. Of course, at the time, we had no idea what they were doing. The ranger was eager to explain to me how they were looking for particular blooms. Apparently, it takes several years for these to produce a single flower and are the food source for many small animals. Now we begin our descent, and soon enough the snow is behind us and the forests reappear. And the wildlife. It's always necessary to keep a close watch out for deer, and remember, they usually travel in herds, so slow down and make sure they all get across the road. Estes Park is a super cute little town near the junction of Highway 36. We stayed on Highway 34 East and continued to enjoy the mountain views along the Big Thompson River. Earlier, I had talked with a service tech at the nearest Mercedes dealership, and it was suggested that we have the coolant system flushed. However, they couldn't get us in for weeks. The next best option was to buy a gallon of coolant, pick up a turkey baster, remove some of the fluid from the reservoir, and replace it with the new coolant. Then it was off to the Whole Foods in Fort Collins, Colorado for a few groceries and an Amazon Hub pickup. I was excited. This was our first Amazon order since leaving home. Fort Collins is a busy college town, and we happened to be hitting it during heavy traffic. Yuck. I had used Campendium and found a rest area just off Interstate 25 south of Cheyenne, Wyoming that had a free dump station and fresh water. There was a nice dog park and it seemed very welcoming to overnighters. We had also planned to change out the coolant after letting the van cool down. After taking care of the tanks and letting Skip have some off-leash time, we got ready to try our coolant fix, only to find out that the dealership had sold us the wrong stuff. We had blue and they sold us pink. A quick Google search told us it was not advisable to mix the two, and we both agreed that backtracking to exchange it was not an option. We ended up watching a fantastic lightning show. Thanks for watching.